In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use materials inside of 3ds Max. Alright, so now that we have unwrapped our model, we've taken that UV template, we brought it into Photoshop, we created a very quick texture. Now what we want to do is we want to learn how to apply that to the 3D model again. So to do this, let's go ahead and open up our material editor. Whenever this opens, give it just a moment, we'll go ahead and we'll put this right up here. You'll notice that we have a whole new interface. Whenever working with materials, we need to determine what kind of material or shader we would like to use. And then we want to begin applying maps to that. So the material that we're going to be using is going to be a standard material. This is the most commonly used material that we'll use, and it's pretty good for getting an idea of how to work with materials. So left click and drag that into your view, and if you select it, double clicking on that, you'll notice you get this dotted line on the outside letting us know that that is currently active, and we can see its parameters here in the parameters view. Okay. Now we can change the color of that material by clicking on the diffuse swatch, and we can change that to whatever color we like at this time, and we can hit OK, and you'll see that that has been updated. We can also add some specularity to the material. Double click on that icon so you can see it a little bit larger, and you can add specularity by adjusting the specular level and the glossiness. Alright, so that's pretty basics, a pretty basic approach to creating a color material. But what we want to do is we want to add a map to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete out that material just by hitting delete on the keyboard, and let's drag in another standard material. Now you'll notice that if we hold down the middle mouse button, we can pan in our view, and you'll notice that with these materials we have these channels. These channels allow us to hook in maps to this object or this material. So a quick way of adding a texture, our texture that we created, to this material is by left clicking on the diffuse color and dropping that. Now drag that and then release, and you'll get this menu. It's going to ask us if we want to use a bitmap. In this case we want to, or we could use any other map that's in this list, but in this case we want a bitmap. This will allow us to use a created texture that we have created inside of Photoshop or whatever. So let's go ahead and select our arcade diffuse, and let's hit open. It's going to ask us if we want to collapse those layers. Yes, I'm okay with that. And there we go. So hold down your middle mouse button, you can see that that has been added as a node, and it's hooked into the diffuse color. Left click on that and you can move that around in your view. Normally I like to just kind of move it away from the main material so I can keep things organized. So now with that, let's go ahead and apply this material to our object. So double click on it, make sure that you have that dotted line around your material, and I'm just going to go ahead and use my middle mouse button and pan over so we can kind of see the arcade machine, and we'll simply use this assign material to selection. Now you'll notice that it changed it to a gray color. Whenever you have materials that have bitmaps on them, you need to make sure that you have this show shaded material in viewport turned on. So left click on that and you'll see the texture shows up. So now we have our player on this side, okay, shooting the gun with our Beast of the Underworld logo on there. Let's go to the other side and you'll see that we have the tick here. That looks great, but then you'll notice that the text is backwards. The text is backwards because it's not facing the current direction of the UV. So a way that we can change that is by going into Photoshop and simply selecting that. Let's go ahead and turn on our UV so we can see this for sure. Hold down Control, left click on that, and then you're going to hit Control T, and that will bring up your transform, and you can right click on it and flip horizontal. Go ahead and hit Enter, and then we'll do File and Save. Once that saves, we can go back into 3ds Max, and that should update. So there you see it's now properly set. Alright, so now we have that all ready to go. We've got our text in place on the front. We've even got our neat little design on the plate where the joystick goes. So now what we can do is we can start to modify the material a little bit. Let's say that we wanted a little bit of glossiness on this. So what we can do is we can bump up that specular level. Okay, we can get a little bit more light on the surface of our object, and we can bump up that glossiness. and you'll see how light is affecting that. You may have to orbit around the object just to see that a little bit better. So now we're getting a little bit of that. It's looking pretty good, kind of shiny. All right, so there we go. So we've applied our texture to our object. Now what I want to do is I want to talk about how to create just regular materials for our objects and just apply them. And more specifically, I want to talk about mental ray materials. And we're going to talk about how to set that up and get that ready in our next lesson.